Well, thanks everyone for joining us on this chilly but sunny Thursday. Really excited to have Andy back and chatting about farm finances in the most seasonal possible way we can. Andy, would you like to introduce yourself and what we're looking up or looking at for the next hour and a half that we're together?
Sure, absolutely. I got a couple of just the visuals that I will start so that people can see what I'm seeing, and hopefully I can see them still. Give me a second to figure this out, y'all. Okay. Can you see the slide in full screen, or did I break it?
It's broken. It's
Okay.
not working right now.
How about now? Still no. Shoot. Give me a second. We'll get there. I swear to God we will. We always do, eventually.
And just a reminder
to...
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to share with folks in the room that we really encourage you to speak up, raise your hand, use the chat, any way that you feel comfortable communicating, but we encourage you to use your voice, especially today, because finances can be a intimidating conversation, but wholly important for us as farmers to keep the wheels turning. So I'm really excited for this conversation, and Andy is the best person that I know to talk about this subject. Makes it
it just means she doesn't
makes
know
it manageable. No. You're the best.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yes, do start on any kind of topic you need to go down that path of. I am totally fine with that. I have content to present. We can stick with it as close or as far as we need to. So I would love to make this conversational. I would love to make this personalized, given that there's only half a dozen of us. So that works out fine. Just by way of introduction, my name is Andy Larson. I work for the Food Finance Institute. We are a small shop that lives within the Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship at what is now branded as the Universities of Wisconsin. So yeehaw, we've got a new little UW logo there for all us weirdos that aren't necessarily faculty, but we try to help keep the wheels on our entrepreneurs in Wisconsin. So that's where we live now. And these are the folks that are the consultants for FFI. We have some additional hired guns as well that work along with us, but the main 3 lanes that we work in: food systems, that's Sarah Larson, that's the director. She is working a lot with food hubs, a lot with food, farmers markets and farmers market groups and things like that. Brad Rostowski works in our food and beverage. A lot of those folks who are trying to kind of scale up, go into a regional or national business, go into distribution centers, go into food manufacturing, that kind of thing. And I'm the guy that gets the privilege of working with the small, diversified farmers that are looking to go into a value-added marketplace of some sort. So that's kind of how we divide our time and there's other folks in our shop that support us as well. The things that I want to seed the conversation with today, and this is in the spirit of Festivus, right? The airing of grievances is question number 1 here, and we kind of prepped you with that with the email earlier. I want to know what is causing the most dissatisfaction in your farm financial life. What are your top complaints specifically about record keeping systems, about financial statements and what they do? And on the flip side of that coin, I'd also like to hear about your Festivus wishes. What are the things that you wish your farm financial systems or farm financial statements were doing for you that they currently are not? With the folks who are here, I think we can get into some of these specifics. And if Christine or Sarah could do a little bit of note taking to make sure that I hit on everything as we go over the course of this evening, that would be wonderful. Thank you. I hear my kid clumping down the stairs, so if my door opens up and I get interrupted, I apologize in advance. So whoever would like to jump in on the top complaints and the top wishes regarding their farm financial systems, I would invite you to do so now.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to come off mute, and when you're feeling emboldened to answer, and then pass it around, we have space and time for all of us to share. So who wants to kick it off?
Knew when
And
the
it-
kids came home on the bus that they'd start interacting.
And you can also, if you're not quite to this point in your business, explain that.
That's okay too.
Yeah. So don't.
Catherine, you were first to unmute. Do you want to
Yeah,
start?
I will go.
Please.
Is it working right now if I'm talking to you?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I have a new dog that is currently trying to play tug of war with me. So if you hear a lot of panting, that's what's going on.
All the dependent mammals are welcome.
So we run a diversified vegetable farm. We do farmers markets and we have a retail greenhouse on our farm. I don't do a ton of different financial statements. I keep all of the kind of where expenses go in columns on a very old school kind of ledger.
Oh, wow. Good on you.
Because my mother-in-law owned a beauty shop for 40 years and that's how she did her budget. So that's how she taught me how to do it. So I've got like where everything breaks down. What I am really wishing for right now is to be able to figure out how to do a farm profit loss statement, because I'm hoping to apply to some grants this coming year. And it's a little bit scary to know where things are. And I have kind of I'm a little bit afraid to look at my numbers in a different way for fear that they will show me that something is wrong. Because
the ignorance is bliss approach.
I'm not from a farming background. And so the like land rich, cash poor aspect of farming, I don't know how it's going to look on paper. So
you are in good company. There are a lot of people who choose to avoid doing some of these things for not wanting to see what the picture really looks like. The thing that I try to remind those folks is that once you know what the picture really looks like, then you've got the opportunity to improve it. You can see the leverage points, you can see the places that need the greatest intervention, and start hacking away at those things sequentially in order to improve the overall situation. So, girls, I am speaking. Stop. Sorry. So sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that in the background, but it's super loud and embarrassing. So I'm going to go on mute for just one moment if I can figure out how to do it.
Andy, you're all good. Life is real. And use this moment. Thank you, Kate, for sharing. I'm sure the sentiment of uncovering what's there probably resonates with a lot of folks here. So may I read Meg's response as others think about theirs? Meg says, I'm a brand new farmer. Just had my equip site visit yesterday from NRCS. Just got my first official contracts to sign for that application. I'm here to listen and learn, but in anticipating seeking organic certification, I am keeping all my receipts to help with that. I'm not even sure how to use these same receipts to do my taxes. Not sure how to include the farm in my taxes because I'm so new. AKA my business has not turned a profit yet. Any beginner tips are great.
Yes, definitely have some beginner tips. That's you don't have to turn a profit to be a business. As a matter of fact, there's an awful lot of businesses that generally don't. including quite a big handful of farmers, unfortunately. But yes, that's all right. You can still be in business. We'll talk a little bit about the Schedule F. We'll talk a little bit about formatting balance sheets and income statements in particular, because those are the typical questions that people have. Yeah, so you're in good stead. At least you're keeping your receipts. There are ways to organize those things. And we'll go from the very rudimentary to the slightly more advanced and powerful and industry standard.
Thank you, Meg, for sharing.
I am very,
Thank you.
sorry. Meg, do you want to, anything else?
No, I just want to say I'm looking forward to that, and thank you, Andy. I'm just sitting outside because it's nice out, and I'm trying to winnow my grain while it's still nice out. I have some left over, so that's why I'm just listening. But yeah, I have my notebook, so yeah, thank you so much.
It's almost 50 degrees in December here too. I hear you. But do it.
Yeah.
Nikki.
I was just going to say I am in a very similar boat to Meg in that I'm super new and just starting. And I have thankfully a mom with an accountant background, and she's a tax preparer professionally. So that is really helpful, but I still am a little bit overwhelmed on how to start keeping good records, and I'm really trying to do everything debt free, other than a mortgage, but I'm really trying to do everything debt free. And so just trying to figure out how to do that as best as I possibly can.
Doing it. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack when you say debt free. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like you don't need the tools that come along with, outside capital, or you are
like I'm working a day job, an awesome
experience?
day job, in order to not take on debt for those things.
Got it. Understood. Very good. Okay. Thank you. All right. So 3 perspectives that are sort of early on in this trajectory, and that's perfect. That's just fine. Ari or Juan Carlos?
I'll go next.
I was just going to raise my hand, but go ahead, Arstad.
You can't arm wrestle for it on Zoom, y'all.
I'll bite the bullet first. I think the thing that I'm having a tough time with is new farm, extremely new, a lot of land, and I think having owners that are not here and don't farm but want to do like 10 different enterprises, and creating enterprise budgets for that for these first couple years. And then they also are really pushing for a steady state enterprise budget, like a P&L breakdown of kind of like a first couple years, and then they want to see kind of how long it would take to get to a steady state where you're breaking even or making a profit. And I think it's just been really hard because I can show them numbers, but especially with like the amount of labor that we have for a lot of the departments, like a intensive veggie production or like a fertility program, or even like a field crop where we're trying to pay off all the new equipment and things like that. And our land is just really rough. I'm just having a tough time with that. And then kind of getting better with QuickBooks and like taking off all of the yearly expenses, but also like the revenue. So at least being able to kind of compare what's actual versus what's planned the year before, or I guess, the year of, as we're kind of getting into it. But I think just like even the basics of like enterprise budgets for new departments or new kind of, I guess, farm operations, I guess you want to call it. I know we've talked about this a lot, but it's just been a tough one for me. Especially doing it in season has been hard. So that's probably some of the complaints that I've been having.
So it sounds to me like you are gaining some mastery over sort of the accounting, which is sort of as you build history, the historical side is becoming a little bit more straightforward to it. The finance side, which is the forward looking, using history to predict the future, as I like to say, that's still complex. And at the risk of sounding like a 2 a.m. infomercial guy, Ari, have I got the tool for you? We need to start having regular phone calls again, because I just created a it's a big ass spreadsheet, really. I think that's the only way to say it. That's going to take enterprise budgets and spin it up into 10 to 15 years of financial statements. So we should do that together.
That would be great.
But yes, like the frustration, I will absolutely recognize that, okay, I'm doing all these enterprise budgets, I'm figuring out how this thing works and how this thing works and how this thing works. And the frustrating thing about doing all that is none of that feeds up directly into a financial statement that you can show to the landowners who are across the country. And like, this is the picture for the future. Like, it's not that automatic. It takes a lot of construction. So yeah, we can get you there, I'm pretty sure.
Sweet. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Juan Carlos.
Okay, I don't know if you are ready to hear my story. But anyway, so here we go. Numbers are not my thing, Andy. Okay. My background, I'm a musician, and which music also doesn't go well with numbers. So fortunately, my partner had a business before, so he's the one that really managed all that part of the business per se. So, and I think, and I want to bring this up here because we have an expression in Spanish with zapatero a tus zapatos, shoemaker to your shoes. So I try to put myself out with the best I can do to help the business. And so that's my forte, and that's what I do. And Robert does his thing that is good at too. And that way we don't create stresses, because that's a stressful thing for me, probably for other people too, dealing with numbers and planning, etc. And so that's my situation. And I think teamwork is fantastic. I grew up, that's my background. That's what I learned from early in the school, just working with others to create the best, and that's what we do. So I don't go that way. I avoid it because I don't like it, because I'm not good at it. And I am 62 years old, so I'm not going to start something that is a challenge for me at this point in my life. So I go deeper in the things I enjoy, because I could get better and better on those. And that's my thing. Sorry for being saying that, but thank you, Andy.
No, that's completely understandable. And that's one of the reasons that one of my slides says, and if you hate all this stuff, hire it done. Because there is a way to have a professional help you figure out how you're painting your profitability picture. So that's one of those things.
That's all you get on YouTube. No more.
What was that, Tim? Oh. I think that was an accident. So yeah, don't feel bad about that. It's kind of a know thyself sort of thing, right? And when you know that this is not your cup of tea, maybe it is your business partners, maybe it is somebody else that you hire in as a bookkeeper, as a tax accountant, as a whatever, to help support that part of the management of your operation. Because I hear a lot of people say that it's not my thing. And I recognize that, and I appreciate that sentiment, but it's got to be part of your thing, because you're an entrepreneur and you got to manage a business, and part of managing a business is understanding your finances. And whether or not you're creating the bits and pieces to help you understand those finances is irrelevant. If you have somebody on your team that can help you do that, that works just as well. Good. So Tim, I saw you joined us. I got the Festivus pole here, right? My makeshift, my piece of aluminum conduit, right? The unadorned Festivus. I looked up what the Festivus pole was supposed to include. Unadorned aluminum pole. So that's what we got here. We're doing our airing of grievances about our farm financial statements and about our farm financial systems, and also our Festivus wishes about what we wish they would do for us. So you got any input on that front?
Oh gosh, yeah. Sorry about my outburst. I was yelling at my kids.
I
You
was
know,
too. Don't
never-
worry. I just managed
there's
to
never a
mute
dull-
first.
Yeah, no, I just blurred things out without realizing I'm on mute or not because I'm on my phone. So I apologize. I guess, and I'm trying to scarf down some dinner quick after work to get outside and yellow corn. I guess my financial issues is just all of the learning, just the learning curve of being a first generation. This will be my fourth year, ending our fourth year of producing a crop, and it's just I'm one person, so usually all the financials get pushed off until this time of year.
Yeah.
Then you start doing your balance sheet and everything, and really it's just the way I've worked is it's mostly just try to collect it all through all the different platforms, because we use Square, we have a website, we have different online accounts, and all of that stuff right now is just, some of it's linked together, some of it isn't, and really it's just trying to juggle it all with just being one person on top of raising a crop, working on equipment, getting that crop marketed, selling it. It's that's pretty much it. I don't know if it's the woes of anything, but it's just the farmer that's trying to do a direct to consumer type of business.
It's a systems question with data living everywhere and having to try and compile that into a story that you can understand. Yeah.
Correct.
Very much appreciate that sentiment, Tim. And if I as far as wishes are concerned, I wish I had the silver bullet for you.
I don't think there is one. It's just work more, don't sleep.
Yeah,
hire someone to do it.
I think though that gaining a little bit, what we at FFI try to do is help people gain a little bit of mastery. And what we've found is that mastery instills confidence, confidence instills efficiency in all of this kind of stuff. And if you can feel better about it, you can do it faster and you can make more confident decisions as well. So, okay. So I think we've got a few pieces here that are going to be really relevant to everybody on this call. This is what I'm calling it, for lack of a better name, making your financials work for you. Christine, is it okay to transition into this stuff, or did you want to do anything else? Okay.
That sounds perfect.
Okay. So the agenda is just a really quick review. So you guys talked to me in July. That was a while ago. You were in the midst of a lot of field work. And you also talked with Wes from Grainer Farms and talked about enterprise budgeting. So you've gotten a hit on that over the head by that particular concept twice now. And why in the world doesn't that feed up directly into financial statements? We'll talk about that. We'll get into the balance sheet in the greatest detail, a little bit on the income statement, a very little bit on the cash flow statement. We're going to talk about some kind of higher level concepts that really kind of make these things gel into an understandable wad of information and why they're important and why you would spend your precious time around the holidays futzing around with numbers trying to make these things happen. I will also give you the best templates that are out there for putting these things together, including links, and I'm pretty sure Christine or Sarah will have those in the chat before you can sneeze. So it's going to be very available to you. Last thing today, if we've got time for it, I'm going to show you a couple of record keeping systems, from the early level spreadsheets to the higher level paid software things, and kind of where you should probably be training your eye to look. And then I'm going to give you a challenge at the very end for your feat of financial management strength, right? To go with the Festivus theme. So just to review a couple of things that we talked about in July, we talked about enterprise budgets, we talked about fixed versus variable. So remind me, what makes something a variable expense and what makes something a fixed expense. I'm going to make you all talk here. And everybody's on mute like, nope.
I mean, this is the thing, is like flexing that muscle and reminding ourselves how we think about them, and it's important and scary, but I encourage everyone to play.
Tim's
the
ready. He
finance
came
game.
off mute. Let's hear you,
I'm ready.
Tim.
So I consider like a fixed cost being like my
Oh shoot.
things that I know that are going to be static for that year.
Okay.
They're going to change or fluctuate. And then a variable would be like fuel. Am I breaking up?
Yes.
I'm getting too far away from internet. Sorry. Field rent is a fixed cost because I know that what that's going to be for the year. And then so a variable would be like fuel and repairs and things like that.
Okay. So rudimentarily, yes, you've got the basic idea. So the reason I say variable costs and overhead costs is because the term fixed lead people to believe that that can't change at all. That it's going to be like, oh, this is my monthly rent. It's going to be exactly the same amount all 12 months. So I try to default to the term overhead. And of course, I have a typo on this slide and I left fixed on there. Damn it. So overhead costs are those ones that are going to remain relatively steady regardless of the scale of your operation, right? So, and I don't mean completely regardless of the scale. If you're 1 acre of wheat versus 1,000 acres of wheat, obviously you're going to have different overhead expenses. But the concept I'm trying to get across is that it's not going to vary acre by acre, bushel by bushel, row foot by row foot, whatever it is. That's what variable costs do. For every additional unit of production, you have an additional expense. And so that's your variable costs. So this is a thing that farmers very, very seldom use in their financial lives and in their financial statements because our financial statements don't ask for it. Our financial statements look different than every non-farming industry. Why? I have no idea. Maybe somebody back in the 20s thought that we were rubes that couldn't use numbers. I don't know. But for some reason, we are utilizing different formats in our financial statements, and we often just completely skip over this concept of gross profit versus net profit that comes from variable costs and overhead costs. So just to show everything that's on this slide here, when you did an enterprise budget, and by the way, you do have this in your spreadsheets that that got emailed out earlier. We've got this handy dandy little template for creating an enterprise budget. On the top, you've got your revenue. On the middle, you've got your variable expenses. So those things are generally going to be these categories that are listed on this slide when we're talking about small grains. When you take your revenues minus your variable expenses, you get gross profit and a gross profit margin. That's how much profitability you create just by the production of that thing and how much is left over to pay those overhead expenses that are going to be just costs of being in business. So once you take the gross profit minus the fixed costs, the overhead costs, and I'm going to use those terms interchangeably because I don't have them straight in my own brain yet, you guys. There are so many tiny little differentiations between terminology and accounting. It's awful. And I'm an accountant by need, not by desire. So after you take the gross profit minus your overhead expenses, that's when you come out with your net profitability. That's your bottom line profitability. That's what's left over at the end of the day. All these numbers in here and the variable expenses are real numbers. They come from samples here at farmdoc.illinois.edu. The link is down there at the bottom. These other things that you have in your template, this is just a number that you fill in the total for the year, and they get allocated out by percentage. So use that as a tool when you're trying to do a side-by-side enterprise comparison. I'm not going to belabor that point. You guys have been over it twice already. If you need assistance on it, reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you. The other thing that we really harped on was business models and the lean business model canvas. I'm sure you remember talking about that. I'm going to try and show you an instance of how it gets used. So when you are creating a business model, it is more, especially for those of us who are in niche markets, direct to consumer markets, direct to farm to firm type of markets, we have to have more than just production. We have to have marketing, we have to have financial management, we have to have human resource management. All that stuff comes into the requirements that we have to take care of as small farmers. And so the offensively unique value proposition, that value proposition thing is something I've developed a whole presentation around. And I'm not going to give it to you right now, but we as farmers, we oftentimes talk about our uniquenesses by how cool our production system is. And what I would encourage us to think about more is how cool the thing is that we're doing for our customers. We need a much more customer-facing value proposition and why we're doing what we're doing for them rather than for us or for the environment or for whatever. We talked about scale. We did a little math around people and how much they spend. I think we talked about pork, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was corn. I don't remember. And then we have this value proposition stuff around brand packaging, pricing, sales, distribution, all of that. So this is all texty stuff that wound up going into this lean business model canvas. And we send this around to a lot of people and they're like, great, what the hell do I do with all these boxes? Like, what am I doing with this thing? So I want to give you just a really quick illustration so that it's in the recording and so that it's in the slides that you guys are able to access later. I did a lean business model canvas for my silly little side hustle egg farm here on the Illinois-Wisconsin border. And so what I tried to demonstrate, and this template, by the way, comes from Tilburg University, which is in like the Netherlands or something, but it's still the best one out there that I've been able to find. The focus on the left is on problems and solutions, right? What are the problems with conventional eggs? What are the solutions that my little egg farm has to offer? What are the alternatives that people can access right now? And how do I keep track of, and by the way, I don't even know if you guys can see my pointer. I should put on my little laser pointery thing here. And how do I keep track of whether or not we're being efficient, effective, and profitable? On the right-hand side, that's the stuff we talked about in June or July. We talked about figuring out what our customer segments are with some pretty serious specificity. Contemporary casual restaurants, natural and health food stores are what I came down to for my farm. Talked about who the earlier adopter was, what kind of channels we're using to get to them, and also how the word is getting spread about us, how we're, what kind of advantages we have as a business, and how all of that feeds up into this unique value proposition. And that takes a long time to write concisely. But where I landed was consistency, consistently high quality, consistently priced, consistently available free-range brown eggs delivered fresh to your table from local family farmers. So that value proposition kind of encapsulates what it is that my business does in order to have a customer-facing value proposition. I would highly recommend that you go through this exercise for your business if you have the opportunity to do so. And regarding that value proposition thing, if one canvas isn't enough, there's another canvas out there called a value proposition canvas, and this is the last of the review, I promise, where you can actually start talking about what it is that your business does, what jobs your customers are trying to do, and that's jobs in a very loosely formatted definition of the word, and how you can create gains and relieve pains for your customer based on your value proposition. So it's just another tool that's out there. It's all linked in this presentation, and it's something that you can do, but it's not what we're here to discuss tonight. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that you had these things available to you, and you have a person that can kind of be your concierge through how to use them. All right, the thing that I really want to hack away at is the financial statements tonight, and the big three that we're going to talk about. It's funny, we very seldom talk about the third one in agriculture. Even when I was banking, we very seldom talked about the third one. But I want to make sure, and they're coming in out of order, so that's great too. What fun. The balance sheet is just going to be your assets and liabilities, right? The inventories of what you own and what you owe. The thing I want you to remember is that it's an indicator of net worth, or to put it quite simply, your wealth. And it's making sure that your wealth is growing over the course of your farming career. The income statement is the second one that people usually work in. It's also called a P&L, a profit and loss. This is going to be the thing that talks about revenues and expenses, and it indicates profitability. Now, this one here, the income statement, is talking about profitability. And the third one, I'm going to say it indicates cash flow. Somebody out there, tell me the difference between profitability and cash flow, if you could, or give me an example.
Can I guess?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is cash flow like immediate money? Is it like set in a space of time, and income is more projection based? What do you say?
So I don't think I fully understand what you mean, but I don't think we're quite on the right path yet, Christine.
Okay.
So the difference that I really want to point out between these two things, the income statement talking about profitability is talking specifically about your business model. Am I creating profitability by growing small grains, by raising layers for eggs, by grazing fruit and vegetables for direct marketing? Like, am I creating profitability? The cash flow statement is showing whether or not you got any cash in your checking account in order to continue doing that thing. Because the income statement does not include some of the non-operational expenses that you're going to experience, such as loan payments, such as draws for family living, all of those different things. We're going to get into that in some detail, but basically I want you to remember that the income statement is painting the picture of your operational profitability specifically. Am I coming out in the positive by growing small grains? The cash flow statement is bigger. In addition to the operation, am I able to service my debt, and am I able to pay myself? Because those things don't fit in to the income statement. The cash flow statement is always going to be a better representation of what's in your checking account. So that's an important way to remember it. Okay, couple pieces of terminology. You basically know what assets and liabilities are. Those are common words. Asset, something you own. Liability, something that you owe. Two other things to add that you get indications from the balance sheet. Liquidity is whether or not you got liquid cash, right? Can I go to Farm and Fleet and buy feed? Do I have enough cash in order to do that over the course of the upcoming quarter or the upcoming year? Solvency is a longer term look at that picture. If I put my farm on the auction block today, would I be able to pay off all the debts that I have outstanding and still have some left over? So those are the things that that are going to be indicated by the balance sheet. And you each have an example of this from your email as well. In those spreadsheets, the second tab, or the first tab, was an example of an agricultural balance sheet that came from the Illinois Finance Authority. It's one of my favorites because it's simple, and it's one page, and it's one frame, and it's very easy to look at and understand and use to your best advantage. There's also a sample one that I've kind of filled out with some stand-in numbers for OG Farmer, whoever that is, 1, 2, 3, 4 Rural Route A, Anywhere USA. That's going to be our stand-in for somebody who's got a land and cattle type of farm. All right, and this is just a picture of that same thing that you had in your attachment. And it's going to serve as our example for going through in a little bit of detail each of these sections that live on the balance sheet. So this is a very classical conception of the balance sheet, with assets here on the left and liabilities here on the right, net worth down here at the bottom. This is the link to get back to this thing. You already have it. If you want a really thorough, complex version of this, they are out there. This one comes from Compeer. I think that link is still up to date, but I'm going to give you the one that I like the best towards the end of this presentation too. So just a few things that I want you to be able to know when you're thinking about current assets. So they're always at the top left component of the balance sheet. And those are the things that are going to be cash or cash equivalents, things that you're going to liquidate to turn into cash in the space of the upcoming year. AR or accounts receivable right here, those are things that you've invoiced. When I send a case of eggs to one of my restaurant customers and I leave them an invoice, but I haven't received the check for it yet, that's an account receivable. And so accounts receivable can get really important when you have a lot of orders going out and being filled and checks coming in more like once a month or whatever. So accounts receivable become important to document because it's going to affect your cash position if you've got a whole lot of accounts receivable, but not a lot of dollars in the bank. It's really hard to spend an IOU from one of your customers. The other major note that I want to make about accounts receivable and all these other inventories, by the way, I understand that some of these things don't look like the type of stuff that you're going to have on your balance sheet. Not a lot of people in the room right now have a hedging account in order to sell futures for grain on the board. That's not the type of marketplace that we're in, and I get that. But you also have to remember that when you go online and you start looking for a template for one of these things, it's going to be formulated for conventional agriculture because that's the largest customer base for these things. They can be adapted and adopted for the type of farming that we are doing. The thing that I want to point out is that the accounts receivable and then any kind of current inventory that you've got, market livestock, crops on hand, retail inventory of flour or bread or polenta or whatever, anything else that's ready to sell, all of that stuff is an inventory. And I want you all to remember that the balance sheet is going to speak and affect your income statement, because if at the end of the year, you don't have very much cash, but you've got, say, a whole lot of grain, a whole lot of retail inventory, a whole lot of stuff that's going to become cash soon, it really makes a big difference in your somebody who's external to your farm, like your banker, for example. They need to know that you have cash equivalents on hand and that it's not, despite the fact that your checking account balance is low, you're not in dire straits, so to speak. So yeah, that's how balance sheets and income statements talk to one another. It's those current asset inventories that give some indication of your cash position. Your intermediate assets, those are going to be the ones just below the current assets. Those are the ones that have a useful life that's a little bit longer, usually 2 to 7 or 10 years. Your machinery and equipment usually is going to make up a large chunk of your intermediate assets for your farm. Any breeding livestock you might have, any over-the-road vehicles you might have. In this circumstance, there is a pretty easily understood market for most of these things. So if you are going to use your machinery, equipment, trucks, etc., to collateralize a loan, a banker can very easily go on Iron Comps or Machinery Pete or whatever and see what those kind of things are selling for. So that makes it a very easily collateralizable asset. The personal assets really don't have much collateral value. Some people have a strong preference to keep the business and the personal very, very separate. And the template I'm going to show you just a little bit further down the road here does that more effectively than this one. This is just simpler. These personal assets, like your, my wife's minivan and the value of my life insurance and the balance of my retirement account, those are not easily collateralizable things and don't really matter that much in a farm's lending and financing life. They matter a lot in your personal life. The other thing that I should point out about intermediate assets is that non-farm businesses, every other business that isn't a farm that puts together a balance sheet, they don't have an intermediate assets category. We have a current assets category and we have a fixed assets category, and that's it. That's one of the ways that farms are different. Why is that? Because there's an emphasis on a lot of these intermediate assets in agriculture, in having equipment, in having livestock, in having those things that last from 1 to 10 years. The long-term asset's basically going to be real estate and real estate improvements. This actually tends to appreciate rather than depreciate. At least the land does. Improvements, like if you're going to fix up a barn or build a grain setup or do whatever, those kind of things can have a depreciation factor to them. They usually are spread over the course of 15 years on up to 27 and a half years, and you have to be a real accounting nerd to know why. So don't worry about that. Just trust me that they can be depreciated over time. The other side of the balance sheet is just these same three categorizations with the negatives, right? With the O's, the things that you have to pay back at some point in the future. So your current liabilities are going to be the opposite of your current assets. You're going to have any kind of obligation that you need to pay back within the space of the upcoming 12 months or so. Accounts payable are just bills that you've received and haven't paid yet. Operating lines. Most of your larger scale grain operators are going to have a revolving line of credit for operating. Many of you guys may not, but this becomes a very, very significant component of a farmer's, especially a grain farmer's, financial life, because we have such a seasonal business here where we go a whole year in between getting paid for what it is that we do, unless we're processing into a value-added product and then selling over the course of the year. That's a different story. But having something to live and work on in between those paydays once a year becomes really, really important. So that's why so many of those grain farms are going to have one of those revolving lines of credit. If you see these things, and sometimes they're acronymized, CPITD, current portion of intermediate term debt, current portion of long-term debt. So if you've got loans out there, that's how much you have to pay on them this year. And you'll have an amortization schedule, or your banker will, in order to indicate what that is. Capital leases have become more and more common. And I don't know if you guys have heard about the difference between capital and operating leases, but as machinery gets more expensive, there's a lot more financing companies that are willing to write a lease rather than a loan. So they are the owners of record of the doohickey in question, and you are paying rent on that thing. An operating lease is one of those things that ends after a certain period of time. And there's no further obligation. A capital lease is one that at the end of the lease period, there's an obligation for you to buy that doohickey, whether that's a combine or a tractor or a grain setup or whatever, it doesn't matter. So those things are indicated on the balance sheet as well, because they are almost like a loan. One of the big sticking points that I want you to be aware of as your very small and many very small operators start by creating, so they take out a credit card and they put it in the farm's name and they use that as their revolving line of credit. It's unsecured, there's no collateral associated with the credit card, but there's an interest rate that's usually between 15 and 40%, as opposed to an interest rate that's closer to prime. And prime isn't great right now. Prime is 8.5%, I think, at the moment. And so operating lines are anywhere from 7 to 10%, depending on how creditworthy you are. So it's not cheap money out there right now, y'all, and that's just a factor of the macroeconomic situation. But what I want you to be aware of is that technically a credit card can call the full balance of the credit card at any point in time and say, you owe us this. They don't generally, but they can. And as a result, those things are all considered current liabilities. So even if you have no intention of paying the full credit card balance over the course of the upcoming year, it still isn't considered a current liability, and it still skews what it looks like you have for working capital, your current assets minus your current liabilities. Because if you got a big credit card balance, it makes it look like you're pretty far underwater with, you know, your cash and cash equivalents. Intermediate liabilities, these are just the loans that you have against your machinery and equipment or your livestock, usually amortized at about the same useful life as the thing itself. You know, pickup trucks and cars are usually amortized over 5 years. A tractor might be over 7. You know, something else might be over 10 if it's, you know, stainless steel or whatever. The non-current portion was up there at the top, the current portion of intermediate term loans, and the long-term liabilities are basically going to be mortgages. These are going to be those things that you have out there against land or against real estate improvements. That's what makes up the 6 big chunks of a balance sheet. The reason that all this is important is because a banker or a grant maker or a cost share provider like the NRCS, et cetera, needs to know that you are in a relatively strong financial position in order to be the recipient of a loan, of a grant, of a cost share, that you're going to continue to exist over the course of the next, you know, 1 to 3 to 5 to 10 years in order to make sure you make good on the obligations that you incur. Also, a banker is going to kind of read this thing like a menu, like what's on there that's collateralizable, is so that if I need to get this person some lent money, what do I use as collateral? What is their total debt to asset ratio? And so let's talk about a couple of those things real quick here. So I'm just going to kind of give you a couple indicators of what we can tell about OG Farmer here just by looking at this basic balance sheet that we've got in front of our face right now. So I've been talking about working capital, right? I've been talking about current assets minus current liabilities. And in this circumstance right here, we've got $135,000 of current assets, and that's all his cash, all of his accounts receivable, his market livestock, the ones that he'll be planning on turning into cash over the course of this year, whatever crop inventory he's got, and whatever whatever prepaids he's already paid for next year's crops. You know, for example, buying seed, buying fuel, buying fertilizer, whatever. But on this flip side here, on the liability side, we've got 152,000 of total. And as a result, this number is smaller than this one, and it looks like he has a negative working capital position. Can that be a problem? Yes, it absolutely can be a problem, because there's things that he's got to get paid for over the course of the upcoming year. And hopefully he's going to be able to make good on all those accounts receivable, sell some additional inventory. And I'd be asking him, if I was his banker, do you have everything on here? Is there stuff in your farm store that has value? Is there work in process stuff? Or is there, you know, animals at the processing plant? Is there, what else is out there as far as current assets, in order to make sure he can get through the upcoming 12 months without, you know, going into a real tough cash crunch type of situation. The other thing that I want to point out is that he still has a much larger total asset number than he's got total liabilities number. 1,984,000 is the total assets. The liabilities is 954. So if you do the division problem of 954 by 1984, that's 48%. So what does that mean? It means that OG Farmer still owns more of his stuff than the bank does. So despite the fact that there's some liabilities out there, he's still got more than half of it covered by his own resources. That being said, most bankers, when you start to look at the 50 to 60% debt to asset ratio area, they get really hesitant to make any additional loans because they start to feel like you're over leveraged as it is. So it's one of those things that you always want to take a peek at where your assets to liabilities ratio, or your liabilities to assets ratio looks like, your debt to asset ratio looks like, in order to see whether or not you'd be an attractive candidate for additional outside capital. Okay, this is just sort of the start of a conversation, because usually when a banker receives one of these things from somebody, it's wrong. And we know that. And we want to talk through, you know, I see a lot of balance sheets because a lot of people share their financial statements with me, and I see a lot of things that don't make logical sense. I see a lot of negatives in the asset category. I see a lot of numbers that don't add up to the bottom number. I see all sorts of mistakes, and it's okay. Not everyone is a banker, an accountant, a financial professional. These things are foreign concepts. If you are giving a banker or a grant maker a balance sheet as part of an application for a loan or for a grant, and it's not perfect, you're not perjuring yourself. It's just not perfect because you're not like super familiar with doing these things. So don't get your undies in too big of a bunch when you're trying to put these together, but do take advantage of folks like myself, like SBDC, like anybody in O-Grain who has got a numbers head on their shoulders. Like, work together with somebody else in order to make sure that you're putting together an accurate portrayal of your operation, because you can have small errors, but if you leave out something big and all of a sudden it looks like you're in the red rather than in the black, that very much changes your attractiveness as a candidate for that loan or for that grant or for that cost share.
Andy, can I ask a question? How
That's,
often? Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Christine, please.
How often should farmers be reviewing or updating the balance sheet? Is it fall
You
into
read
that
my
once?
mind.
Okay, maybe.
You read my mind. At the very least, correct and update your balance sheet once a year on the same day. Traditionally, that is December 31st of whatever the year is. Why? Because then you can compare that entire year to the next entire year. And the difference between balance sheet number 1 at the end of this year and balance sheet number 2 at the end of next year, that's going to affect your income statement, because it shows you the inventories that you had and now don't, or didn't and now do. So we're going to talk about accrual adjustments in just a minute here. So at the very least, once a year, have an updated balance sheet that you can take a look at, send to your banker, do whatever. Is it better to do it more often? Yes. Something that's continuously updated through a software program like QuickBooks or whatever, that's ideal. And knowing that you're moving in the right direction at all times, that's ideal. But at the very least, once a year on 12/31, make a new and updated balance sheet. And that is going to be one of your feats of financial strength, y'all. I'm challenging your financial management strength, and on 12/31, when you want to be going out for New Year's Eve, or maybe some of you are my age and don't do that anymore because it's too tiring, make yourself an updated balance sheet. It takes a couple hours, because you're going to be going through and looking at balances on retirement accounts, and you're not going to remember your logins, and you're going to have to remember how to get all that stuff. You're going to be collecting your receipts from your different shoe boxes. You're going to be collecting your balances from Stripe and Square and PayPal and everywhere else that you have money sitting around. Getting that all that disparate information in one dashboard, in one piece of paper, is going to give you such a better indication of where it is that you stand. And I'm thinking about you, Catherine, because I can see you in the corner there. It's like, it's going to give you such a better indication, such a better foundational knowledge of where your business is, and allow you to set objectives for where you want your business to go. You came off mute.
Yeah, I have a question, which is, I mean, my farm current assets look significantly different at this time of year than in the middle of May when I've got money rolling in the greenhouse.
Yep.
So if I'm giving these, am I using this balance sheet? I mean, do I not do one at December and I do one that looks better in May, or are they trying to look at what the whole year looks like? Because it is a very...
There's two ways to answer that, because it's a great question. It really is. It's an insightful question, because is this a marketing piece? Like, do I want to put together my balance sheet when things look the best? Arguably, yeah, there's a little bit to be said for that. But the thing that you want to do for you is if you can do it at a consistent time every year. If that's May, when you've got cash coming in May, every May 1st or May 5th, the Cinco de Mayo, right? Do a new balance sheet and see how your operation this year on May 5th compared to last year on May 5th. Because that's going to give you more information than saying, all right, I want to do this when I look the best. If you're doing that for a banker or for a grant maker or for whatever, that's totally fine. And I totally get that. There's a public relations value to that. But your banker is going to see it every year and hopefully on the same day every year. And that's going to make that comparative analysis from one year to the next much more useful. So for your decision-making purposes, it really doesn't matter whether you do it in December or May. It's the comparison from one year to the next that really makes the difference.
And is that something that I could theoretically go back and get a relatively good idea with the information that I have from year to year? And am I pulling a lot of the information from the Schedule F, or is it in a lot of disparate places?
So the Schedule F is more of an income statement than it is a balance sheet.
Okay.
Okay. And so what I mean by that is that the Schedule F is going to be a listing of revenues and expenses, not assets and liabilities. An asset is a thing that you have that's worth something. A liability is a thing that you have that you owe on. But a revenue is something that you're getting paid for. An expense is something that you're paying for. It's a fundamentally different type of transaction.
Okay.
So as a result, the balance sheet from like what I talked about with the accrual adjustments, that does speak to your income statement. Because I don't have cash on hand, I now have grain on hand. Or I don't have grain on hand, I now have cash on hand because I made a bunch of sales. That they talk to each other in that regard. But overall, the income statement that we're going to talk about next has much more to do with the money traveling in and the money traveling out as opposed to the assets that I now have under my purview.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Other questions about the balance sheet? I've said a couple of reasons over the course of the time that I've been speaking about why it's important. I want somebody to tell me what I said. What did you hear about why putting together one of these things is important? Because that's one of the biggest mental barriers is like, I don't want to because I don't care. You should care. And I said why you should care. Now tell me why you should care. So many mute indicators out there.
There's
Ari.
a couple reasons. I mean, I'll give it a shot. I think a big one is being able to, I don't know, leverage a business to be able to get a loan or show a bank or some kind of lender that there's some kind of profitability, or not even that, just a road to profitability.
Absolutely.
And then also just so you know if certain things are not worth continuing, or I don't know, just I think for me, like the biggest thing of putting in so much work to enterprise budgets, and I think, yeah, having like this breakdown of assets and liabilities is really cool because you see a greater picture of if you can expand, if you need to shrink, if you just need to reevaluate certain enterprises. So yeah, there's a lot more I know, but those are ones that jumped out at me for sure.
Those are my top two. Gold star to you as well. It's for your banker and it's for you. Can I get any outside financing? Is my net worth moving in the right direction? Because if you see your net worth start going down from year to year, and it's not just from, stock market fluctuations on your IRA or whatever it is, then you're got to start worrying like, okay, so I'm losing ground. Why am I losing ground? Do I have less cash now? Did I sell a bunch of equipment and then pay some current obligation and now all that cash is gone and the equipment's gone? Like, what is it that's changing my situation? So, because we are seasonal and in agriculture, sometimes we need those sort of lagging indicators to make sure that we are going in the right direction. Other balance sheet questions before I hit on income statement. The next two are going to be faster. And I'll still get into some important details, but I'm not going to get into every detail because there's just, usually I do this over the course of an entire day, y'all. We got 90 minutes. So you know what revenues and expenses are generally, right? Income from sale of goods, costs related to your operations. Accounting has all sorts of definitions in it, and it's freaking annoying. Oh, Juan Carlos, go ahead.
Yes, I have here Robert, which I mentioned before. He knows more than me, so he has a question. Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, so I would like to just interject a bit of the complexity that I think many of us experience in the small farm environment, and I know that certainly affects what's happening on a balance sheet, on the income statement, because we are seasonal, but in order to move a farm forward, we have to be able to have reliable employees. And we've learned the only way to do that is if we can offer employment year round, with essentially maybe 1 month off around Christmas into January.
Yep.
But if we don't do that, we found it becomes a huge amount of time investment to try to retrain, reemploy, or employ newly people that don't have experience. And we keep starting over every year, essentially. And we finally said, enough is enough. Now, with that said, we realized then that how are you going to be able to provide a consistent income for everyone and, you know, the same amount of hours when the workflow has changed and the product that we're trying to sell has also diminished because of seasonal changes. So our answer so far to that has been two things. And that is that, first of all, we must not try to rely upon loans. We have found loans, particularly through the FSA, to be rather complex in the sense that you have to comply with certain course requirements that they want you to take.
Sure.
In order to get a loan ever again in the future, you must pass this course that they put you through, which I feel for me, it was difficult. And I'm certainly no accountant, but I'm also not a complete novice, but it required a lot of effort. And finally, we just said after another retest, forget it. We just will never get another loan again from FSA. Besides that, we really didn't want to start having to pay accrued, interest. And so our approach so far has been, we must try to get grants, something we do not have to pay back, something that we do have to be responsible with as far as compliance, but something that we do not pay back. We have to either find supporters, backers, grants of all different sorts, and several grants, some small, some big, some from the state. And of course, now there's a lot of availability of those through COVID funds that came through every state. So I just wanted to interject that when I heard you mention about loans, because I really think those become a downward spiral for many farmers, particularly small-scale farms.
Okay, so you brought up some really important points, and that last point is one that I would argue with you, because I would argue that outside capital, OPM, other people's money, is a tool, not a weapon. And we have to, as farmers, and we often do not, and we should, remember that we have to scale our business model in such a way that we can afford things like loan payments and staff. Now, I completely agree with you that those are big, nuanced, problematic things that everybody is facing right now. Trying to get personnel at this point in time for anything that's a, dirty job, right? Anything that is cold or hot, anything that's not a knowledge job in an office sitting in a chair like I am right now, I recognize that. It gets harder and harder to hire for, because our entire country and the state of Wisconsin and the state of Illinois and where a lot of us are sitting, we have more open positions than we do have human beings looking to fill them. And it's a fundamental math problem that we've got going on right now, is the most desirable positions are being filled first. And much of our populace has been trained to find a job desirable if it's year-round, consistent, salary, benefits, air-conditioned, close to home, all of those things. And so finding the human beings that will be willing to work irregular hours out in the sun, hands in the dirt, you've got to find those passion people. The ones who are there because they love it, and I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, and I'm not trying to paint like I've got the solution to this problem by any stretch of the imagination, but staffing is going to continue to be difficult for the foreseeable future because of the lack of human beings that we've got to fill these positions. And until we can make our on-farm staff positions comparable in remuneration, benefits, ease, etc., we're going to have a hard time outcompeting the, whatever it is, the next thing down the road. So we've always got to keep that in mind, that we're in competition for workers with every other employer that's out there. As far as the lending point that you made, I agree with you. Getting into loans is complicated, whether it's through the FSA or anybody else. And part of the way to make it less complicated is developing mastery of the content that we're talking about tonight. And having time to develop that mastery is hard. It's hard because we don't like it. It's not the thing that we prioritize. And so as a result, we spend our time producing, we spend our time marketing, but until we spend some time record keeping, financial statement, if I can make that a verb, it gets more and more unattractive, I guess, to try and get these outside funds in order to grow more than just, organically through cash flow. Most of the time that we as farmers are building business models that have, relatively small profitability and provide us a lot of lifestyle benefits. Those of us who are farmers who want to scale a little bit more quickly and grow into some more, whatever you'd call them, high-flying marketplaces, then we have to keep that in mind when we're building our business models.
The other thing I wanted to add, the second item, which we found to be very helpful in the employment sector, is that we try to employ people who have been difficult to find meaningful employment for. And in our case, those have been refugees.
Okay.
So we've had very good experience with that. And so if any of the farmers are close to one of the refuge cities where different organizations are housing refugees and helping them integrate into a community, they're a very good source of employment. Simply connect with these refugee network organizations or support networks and see where are these people and how can it work with the transportation, etc. Because their work ethic has been excellent. And
they're farm kids still. And a lot of times those are what we've lost in our country, unfortunately, is we don't have the people that are like not multiple generations removed from their farming background.
Yeah. The other thing that we found very helpful as we had this challenge of making that balance sheet work so that we weren't always in the red was that we really had to diversify a lot. And that meant creating an Airbnb or 2 Airbnbs on site at the farm. So we had to get into agritourism in the sense that we were bringing people to the farm, so that we created these connections with the schools, with soil and water conservation district, NRCS, all these entities that want to support, have money to support, and they just need a venue and an idea. And we have to come up with those. And so we've worked really hard at that and formed good relationships with them. But those sorts of that support network, I think, is really critical to make it work on the farm. You have to have diversification. And in the winter is a good time, which we're working on now, is creating a new product that we can sell.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't come from the hoop house, but something else that the farm can produce and then sell without a lot of red tape.
So you're starting to recognize that every different enterprise on the farm has a different profit proposition, a different profit margin. And we have to be very well aware that growing, niche grains and selling them as commodities, that there is a certain potential profit margin that's inherently built into that. And I don't know what that percentage is. It's slightly different for every farm, but it's not super high. We're not going to make 80% profit margin on niche grains unless we've got some kind of fabulous marketplace. So we have to take what our existing profit margins actually look like and multiply that by the number of acres in order to meet our financial objective. One of the things that I tell every single one of my clients that comes down the pike is that the place that we begin in order to make meaningful change in the farm financial life that you have before you is by having an income objective, because everything else gets back calculated from that income objective. The amount that you need to sell in order to achieve the profit that you need in order to get to your full-time equivalent salary, in order to be able to pay 6 people to work on your farm 3 months a year. All that stuff can be back calculated from the objective. Christine, you came off mute.
I did, only to thank Robert and Juan Carlos for sharing their experiences, and also to let you know, Andy, that we have just 8 minutes left. So if there's a prioritization of time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get to the punchline on a couple of these things here. So we talked about the income statement. We talked about the Schedule F. The Schedule F is the tax document that goes and describes your revenues and expenses for your farm over the course of that year and whether or not you have an income tax obligation. Almost all farmers are keeping their books on a cash basis, and your Schedule F is generally recorded on a cash basis. And what that means is that we are recognizing revenues and expenses when actual money changes hands. When we deliver somebody a bushel of grain, we don't recognize the income until they write us the check for it. Other outfits use accrual accounting. Big publicly traded companies use accrual accounting, and that's they recognize the income when the sale is made, not when they receive the check. Why? It smooths out lumps. We in agriculture, we have seasonality, we have life cycles of our animals and our crops, we have inherent lumpiness in our financial lives. And so one of the things that we do in order to help smooth out those lumps is we make accrual adjustments. I've already mentioned that very briefly already today. I'm going to skip through a couple things. That's the top of your Schedule F. Okay. In order to make this as concise as I possibly can. So someone was asking about an income statement, and I want them to pay their most attention to this left-hand column right here. This, in its sort of most rudimentary form, is the income statement for your farm. It's got your income sources on the top. All these things that are in parentheses, they match up to the Schedule F in your tax documents. This is linked, by the way, to bring you right back to the Iowa State document where this came from. I also have an even better one coming up very shortly here. And then these expenses are the expense categories that are from the Schedule F as well. This revenues minus expenses equals net farm income. Fundamentally, that's a profit and loss statement or an income statement. Same thing. This, unlike a balance sheet, represents a period of time as opposed to a point in time. So usually an income statement is being produced for a year on a farm. Some people are doing it quarterly. The thing that I want you to remember is that for folks like us who are producing commodities that we keep in storage or have on our farm for a period of time, our income position can be changed by things that we are holding for sale, by bills that we are, obligated to pay, by critters that are still walking around and haven't been sold yet. So the big takeaway point from this is that don't forget your balance sheet when you're putting together your income statement. If you have a bunch of stuff now that you didn't have on January 1st and it's now December 31st, and that stuff isn't cash, but it's going to be cash eventually, make sure you accurately represent your cash position by accounting for your current assets. That was the big takeaway with the accrual adjustments on the income statement. The income statement also, as I mentioned before, does not have anything about loan payments, with the exception of, where do they have it? Interest. Interest is an expense. It's the rent you pay on somebody else's money. I'm still presenting, leave me alone.
Can you not have hot chocolate?
Yes, go away. I love you. Sorry, y'all. Interest is the rent that you pay on a loan. The principal payments are not recognized anywhere on this income statement. What does that mean? I'll tell you in just a minute here. The other thing is that sometimes we have to live out of the revenues, or excuse me, out of the profitability that we create from our farm businesses. And those monies that we take out of our farm as draws in order to buy clothes or meals or groceries or whatever else it is, those are not represented here on the income statement. So this is talking about the fundamental business model is like, are we coming out in the black by producing these grains? Yes, but is it producing enough black in order to pay our loans, buy our groceries, etc.? So the big difference, and I'm going to have to skip through some of this, you guys, and I apologize. I can get into any more detail you'd like to when we're offline. The difference between an income statement and a cash flow statement is that it's going to represent, the cash flow statement is going to represent not only what you did with your operating activities, it's also going to represent what you did with your investing activities. What do I mean by investing? I'm not talking about stocks and bonds here. I'm talking about, did I buy a tractor? Did I sell a tractor? Did I buy a combine? Did I sell a combine? Did I have things, capital assets that came into my life or that I had to spend money on? And did I have to get loan proceeds in order to pay for some of those things? So the dollars that are represented by your investing activities and the dollars that are represented by your financing activities, which has to do with your relationship with the bank, those are all represented together with your operations. And by mixing together in a bowl your operating, your investing, and your financing activities, you're going to much more closely represent the amount of cash that you got in your checking account at any given time. Why farmers ignore the cash flow statement so frequently, I don't know, because we should pay a lot more attention to it. I never put one together until I came into this role either. So it's not like something that you guys are missing and I didn't miss. No, it's one of those things that we didn't pay a lot of attention to. And it's because it's kind of simple. It's not that different. We're just taking our P&L and then say, okay, what are we spending on equipment? Or what are we receiving from the sale of equipment? Or what are we receiving from loans and what kind of loans are we paying back? Okay. I'm skipping that. This was the thing that I keep mentioning. This little page has what I would consider the best templates for a balance of completeness and user friendliness of anything out there. There's a balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement template from Michigan State University Extension. I don't know what their secret sauce is, but their things on here are awesome. And they are very usable, and they are very farmer friendly, and anything that is complicated, they usually have an explanation for. Use them. I work for the University of Wisconsin, and I'm sorry, UW, but these are better. These are the best ones I've been able to find. I highly recommend those first 3 templates, especially if you are new to developing financial statements for your farm business. 2 bonuses there at the bottom, those 2 links. If you're going to get into QuickBooks, this has a template for how to set up your chart of accounts, which is quite possibly the most important fundamental step to becoming a QuickBooks user as a farm financial manager. If your chart of accounts is wrong, everything else you do in your life with QuickBooks is going to be wrong. And it's a big waste of effort and time. So that chart of accounts template is super useful. That farm finance scorecard thing at the bottom gives you a very simple green, yellow, red indicator of your different financial metrics. It's a little bit more complicated. I would say if you're a 201 or 301 level farm finance person, that's probably a more appropriate tool for you to play around with. But I highly recommend all of these things, and I'm sure that Christine and Sarah will have them out to you like before I even can. I know it's 5:31. I'm going to give you the punchline for this last piece on record keeping. You can do record keeping on spreadsheets. As a matter of fact, oh my gosh, so many animations. I'm sorry, you guys. There's so many different ways that you can keep records for your farm. And having, Kate, like you were talking about with the paper ledger, that's one way to do it. And like, you know what, it's a lot better than not doing it at all. Like, I'm so happy that you're doing that level of, and by the way, it takes some fastidiousness too, because you have to be the person that writes in every little thing instead of having it just be auto-populated by connecting it to your bank account or whatever. I would say that most of you folks who are not ready to jump into a software suite yet, spreadsheets are a perfectly achievable way to do farm financial record keeping and farm financial projections and management. I'm in spreadsheets every day. Even the most advanced farm financial managers I know are using a combination of both software and customized spreadsheets. As a matter of fact, some of the best ones are defaulting more to spreadsheets because they are, you know, they're evil geniuses and they develop their own. That link down there at the bottom takes you to a publication from Missouri Extension that is a farm record keeping handbook, and you can get it in paper or you can get it in spreadsheet, and it's one of the only ones that I've found that separates things out enterprise by enterprise, and I think that's a really important step, and I highly recommend that little template there too. Okay, and last but not least, there's plenty of online cloud-based software out there to help you do farm record keeping. Is it designed for farms? No, not necessarily. Can you make farms fit? Yes, absolutely you can. The free version, if you're just, you know, trying this out for the first time, is Wave Accounting. Doesn't cost anything. It's not as powerful as QuickBooks, but you can do a hell of a lot of the basic things that you need to for farm financial management. Highly recommend that. I've used it for a lot of years. I'm just now having to start walking the talk and start thinking about getting into what the industry standard thingy really is, and that is QuickBooks. 90, I don't know how many % of entrepreneurs like eventually wind up in QuickBooks in one way, shape, or form. Whether or not they use it right or not is an entirely separate question, but they're using it. And it integrates with everything, and there's tons of pros out there to help you with it, and it's expensive. It's going to cost you $1,000 a year for the plus version of it. And is it worth it? For someone who's going to use it? Yes. For someone who's not going to use it? No. So just be aware of the expense that you'd have to go to in order to make that thing happen. Okay. You can hire it done, as I said, by the way. If you do not like this stuff, if you will never like this stuff, and you cannot devote the time or mental energy to this stuff, there are people that you can pay hourly in order to do it for you. That's how to get in touch with me. And I am so sorry for having to cram in all of that stuff at the very, very end. I would have loved to have spent a little bit more time on the income statement, but I am happy to hang around past time and answer any questions that you guys have that are outstanding, as long as Christine can leave the room open.
I can hang too. I just don't know if your girls are requiring hot chocolate immediately, but I
Oh my
want to
God.
thank
I'm
you for yeah, it's a lot. And I think the most important maybe takeaway is that you just got to try using some of these tools and systems. And I like, again, iterating like, Andy, this is a language, practice the words, think about them, how they make sense in your farm business too. So
Yep.
you know.
Use those templates I recommended, because I have to look at a lot of them. And if you don't want to have to go, searching through all that stuff yourself, hopefully it can save you some time. I am available to you guys to help be a guide through some of this stuff, especially some of you folks who are early on. Some of you folks who are further advanced, I'm happy to work with you too, as Ari and I were already talking about. I really think that there, as Juan Carlos mentioned, there's a lot of dollars out there that are available to farms right now. And some of it's related to COVID era stuff, some of it's new stuff, but like, we're a little unique in that we can leverage grant funds as sort of a fundamental financial component of building our business. Is it the thing that we want to rely on? No, not necessarily. We want to make sure we've got those reliable sales revenues that are coming through on a monthly or quarterly basis. That's much more straightforward as far as knowing where we're going to stand a year from now. But if we can get a little gravy on top from the feds or from the state or whatever for doing a thing that we want to do anyway, boy, oh boy, if we can apply to one of those grant programs, have some of these financial statements put in together in sort of a legible format. And by the way, the folks who are reviewing your grant and looking at your financial statements, they know less about them than you do. So if you have an error on there, don't worry about it, because they're not going to be able to tell.
Should have let off with that one in.
And it's not 100% true. There's some very, knowledgeable numbers people that are reviewing grants, but there's also people who are not subject matter experts in that particular subject matter. I guess I should put it that way. What other questions are out there regarding all of this stuff? Again, I apologize for the speed at the end, y'all.
I guess that template from Kentucky or Missouri,
yeah,
that combines enterprise budgets.
Yeah,
would that kind of help deal with, because I'm having a tough time dealing with outputs and products from certain departments and like operations, and then trying to find a way to balance them with the overall budget of the entire farm, while still like technically being a customer for another department that's like, it's all internal. And so handling like internal, like trying to close a loop system. So it's like, if I'm going to be buying mulch and like substrate from the forestry department, that's going to be feeding into the mushroom and specialty crop department, how am I going to write that off? Or then if there's also like excess waste from produce that I could sell at like a real, almost like a second harvest type of thing, that will then feed my fertility program. Is that kind of able to be baked in, or is that something that kind of would be separate? I know, because
you're getting advanced here, Ari. That kind of stuff, those sort of internal transactions, they absolutely can be done, but they're more complex. If you're working in QuickBooks, you can create, and I'm not the QuickBooks guru. I know people at kitchen table consultants that know how to do this. You can build in a clearing account which allows you to, and I don't know exactly what that means, so don't ask, that allows you to do some of those internal transactions that do not wind up affecting the bottom line of the overall operation, despite the fact that there are additional transactions. So it can totally be done, and it can be done in QuickBooks. It can also be done in sort of like spreadsheet format, and we can do an exercise to sort of make those things a little bit more clear. The thing that you want to ask yourself is, like, first off, are we getting the full picture for the full farm in order to be able to report to our owners? Like, do we know, how everything is going first? And then as we're breaking it down into the departments, into the enterprises, etc., and trying to keep a more detailed accounting of how each of those things is performing, that's when we start getting a little bit more advanced, and that's when we start having to do a little bit more accounting and a little bit more record keeping in order to keep all that stuff straight. Is there a simple, straightforward way to do it? Maybe, but I'd have to ask somebody else what it is.
I'm dropping in the chat. Cornell has a QuickBooks for Farmers course if you're looking for like deep dive learning on that type of work.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got it. I haven't taken that course before, but I know people who have and said good things.
Yeah. I'm open to doing work sessions with anyone, maybe Meg or beginner folks that are putting these templates into practice, because it's something that we need to do for our farm, and I've just been slacking on it. So let's just hang out and drink coffee and do that. That's available. So.
Well, and don't feel bad, because I slack on it too. I've been managing my farm finances in Excel for years and years and years and years. And now, as I yell at people to get into a better, more informed financial situation, I've got to start walking the talk. And despite the fact that my farm is just a little minuscule side gig for my overall financial life, I still want to manage it the way I'm telling you guys to manage it. So I'm learning QuickBooks with you, my friends.
Do you think, Christine, that it would be good if, well, anybody can come? You could just make it be like an open session or whatever. Or you could be like, because sometimes I think where Nikki was saying, I mean, maybe we're just like at the very beginning, and maybe that would be too elementary for someone else. You know what I mean? Maybe they would want to have a different small group. I don't really know. I mean, because I'm really grateful, Andy, for everything that you're saying, and I'm absorbing it, and I'm gonna try those templates. I like worksheets, so I can participate in it. But yeah, it's a lot over my head, and I'm dyslexic with numbers, so I know that I cannot really be the person to do that. I can do it, but it would always have to be checked by someone else, and it's just too hard for me. So I think like getting maybe like a meeting where we talk about what are the things that have to go into it and plug it in. But I would definitely think I'd have to hire, or my husband, he's really good at accounting. He's always said he would do it, or someone else I have to hire, right? Because it's too hard for me to do all the sheets, but I could plug it in. But yeah, I would be really open to doing a beginner coffee talk about the pieces, you know what I mean? And maybe separate them by skill level or where you're at,
Yeah. I'll connect with you, and we'll figure that out and share it out.
Yeah.
Meg, one of the things that becomes your responsibility in this circumstance is, well, in addition to, appropriately cajoling your husband into being the accountant for you, the thing that you need to do is put the systems in place, because the accountant needs the data in order to produce the decision-making reports.
That I'm good at. Yes, the systems. I like that idea. Yeah, talking about how to use the systems and then someone else do all the numbers. Yeah. Because it all just looks like one big to me, like after a while, Okay.
If that person knows where to go and get that information because you have great systems in place, you're going to be wonderful partners in this endeavor.
Okay. Okay. So when the way to create those systems would be, like, could you just really quick, like say like a blurb about that?
Sure. So what the systems that I want, if I'm, so pretend I'm the husband, right? And because I am the husband that does the record keeping for my farm as well. I want to be able to go somewhere and see, all right, this is how much she spent on feed. In
Okay.
my circumstance, I want to know where my feed bills are. Are they all in one place for the entire year? Can I just write them down? Perfect.
Okay.
I want to know how much we spent at Farm and Fleet in order to buy shavings, for bedding. Like, is that in one place?
But even if that's a bunch of bags or boxes of receipts, that's what it is, but label it.
It's still a system.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And rudimentary systems are still systems and they still work.
Yeah. I feel like I just try to put them in, like, I label them, and then as long as I know the categories, then I just throw the receipts in there, because then I can go through it later.
Yep.
Or through, online stuff too, or the credit card, right?
Develop the
Yeah.
categories together. You enable the system in your workaday life, and then he can put the final numbers together quarterly, annually, however often it is that you guys do it.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The hardest one to track, by the way, just so everybody knows, is time. Your own time. Because boy, oh boy, do we not keep track, and do we not want to know how much time we spend on these different enterprises. And I'm not saying that you have to, but it is worthwhile to know, like, so I put together
No,
two
I use an
enterprise
app.
budgets of-
I use an
Oh.
app for that because I've taught I've done a lot of like project-based writing things for people where I had to like prove to them that I did this many hours of writing or editing or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm more of an artist type person, so I've done a lot of these side jobs. But yes, there's really good apps where you can just go in and go like from today, this, and that seemed to be the only way, because it's always our phones are always sort of with us,
Yes, agreed. Agreed. And if only my phone could sense when I'm in the chicken coop and when I'm not, right?
Oh, but it could if you were
But
using
Big Brother
QuickBooks
could-
key sheets.
Exactly. You could set it all up so Big Brother will be watching you in the chicken coop.
I know. My phone, the AI is like, Alexa, am I in the chicken coop?
Where am I?
The reason I bring that up, though, is not because y'all have to calculate what it is you spent on time. Like, you're not paying yourself all the time. Like, I'm not paying myself all the time. As a result, it's not like you have to say you should be making a wage. That's not necessarily the point. The point is kind of understanding, like, at the end of the year, this is how much profit I walked away with.
Right.
And from glass gem corn, it was $10,000, and from, produce, it was $10,000. But I spent 100 hours on the corn, and I spent 1,000 hours on the produce, and that profitability per hour type of thing is going to give you a much better strategic indication of whether or not you want to continue an enterprise.
No, totally. That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, Andy. I'm probably going to sign out today. Or
Yeah.
thank you so much.
It's getting late. I gotta feed the chickens.
Feed
And
the
the chocolate.
chickens and the chocolate, the kids.
Now, I think the kids sound like they're feeding themselves.
Nice. That's a win.
I think they may be having marshmallows for dinner, but what are you gonna do?
You might have to go there and stop the sugar madness. You might have to go cut them off.
You handled your kids
for the love of God.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing night. We'll follow up with all the links and resources to get started on some of this work. So, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.